The heat of Cairo was oppressive, a thick, suffocating blanket that clung to my skin as soon as I stepped off the plane. But I barely noticed it. My mind was consumed by the whispers of the hidden tomb, the one that held the lost treasures of a forgotten pharaoh. It had become an obsession, a relentless drive that had brought me to this ancient land. With my team at my side, we set out into the vast, unforgiving desert, armed with nothing but determination and ancient maps, brittle with age. Each day was a battle against the elements. The scorching sun, the blinding sandstorms, the endless dunes that seemed to stretch on forever. But we pressed on, following the cryptic symbols on the maps, deciphering their secrets one by one. The deeper we ventured, the more palpable the sense of foreboding became, as if the very desert itself was warning us to turn back. Finally, after days of grueling search, we found it. The entrance to the tomb hidden beneath centuries of sand. It loomed before us, silent and imposing, its darkened entrance like the maw of some ancient beast. Even the most seasoned among us couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to cross a threshold we could never return from. The air inside the tomb was thick with centuries of dust, and the eerie silence seemed to press down on us from all sides. Our footsteps echoed faintly against the stone walls, the only sound in this forgotten place. As we ventured deeper, the dim light of our torches flickered across relics long abandoned, broken pottery, crumbling statues, and scrolls too fragile to touch. My pulse quickened when my gaze fell upon something different, something far more alluring. There, half buried beneath the sand, was an amulet, unlike anything I had ever seen. It was beautiful, its surface adorned with intricate hieroglyphs that seemed to shimmer in the torchlight. I could feel my breath catch as I reached out to it, my fingers hovering just above the cool metal. The local guide's voice broke through my trance, his words laced with fear. He spoke of a curse, of a terrible fate that awaited those who disturbed the pharaoh's treasures. But his warnings were nothing more than distant echoes in my mind. This was my discovery, my key to fame. Without hesitation, I slipped the amulet into my pocket, ignoring the chill that shot through me as I did. Whatever dark energy it held, I was too consumed by the thrill of the find to care. The nightmares began almost immediately after I claimed the amulet. At first, they were fleeting, dark images that dissipated with the morning light. But they grew, each night more vivid and horrifying than the last. I found myself in the endless expanse of the desert, running, always running, from a shadowy figure that stalked me with relentless malice. I could feel its presence, closing in, its breath hot on the back of my neck. No matter how fast I ran, the sands seemed to drag me down, pulling me closer to whatever hunted me. Soon, the nightmares didn't end when I woke. The boundary between sleep and reality blurred, and I began seeing the figure even in the waking world. A flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow that didn't belong. Always there, just out of reach. The amulet, once a prize I had proudly displayed, now felt like a lead weight around my neck. Its coldness seeped into my skin, sending shivers down my spine. It was as if the amulet was alive, feeding off my fear, growing colder as the days passed. My reflection became a stranger. My skin, once tanned from the desert sun, grew pale and sallow. Dark circles formed under my eyes, hollowing them out, making me look as haunted as I felt. My colleagues noticed the changes, their concerned glances and whispered conversations doing little to soothe the growing paranoia gnawing at my mind. They didn't understand, they couldn't, This was my burden to bear. I became hostile, pushing them away, retreating further into myself. The fear twisted my thoughts, convincing me that they were conspiring against me, that they wanted the amulet for themselves. I clung to it desperately, even as its presence poisoned my soul. The world around me grew darker, smaller, and more suffocating, but I couldn't let go. I wouldn't let go. I awoke in utter darkness, the cold stone beneath me familiar yet foreign. My heart pounded as I realized where I was. The tomb. But how? My breath caught in my throat, the air thick with the scent of decay, the ancient death that had been undisturbed for centuries until I had foolishly brought it to life. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of my ragged breathing. I tried to move, but the walls seemed to press in on me, the space growing smaller, more suffocating. And then I saw it, the shadowy figure, no longer confined to my nightmares, standing before me in all its terrible glory. The vengeful spirit of the pharaoh, his eyes glowing with hatred, his form twisting with the fury of the centuries. He had come for me, for the amulet I had dared to steal. I could feel his rage, his curse closing around me like a noose. My screams echoed through the tomb, but there was no escape. The amulet around my neck burned like ice, searing my flesh as the curse took hold. The pharaoh's spirit loomed closer, his presence overwhelming, and I knew there was no salvation. The darkness swallowed me whole, my soul trapped within the amulet, waiting for the next fool to unleash its wrath.
The wooden crate sat before me, its ancient contents waiting to be revealed. My heart raced with anticipation as I pried open the lid, the smell of dust and history wafting up to greet me. Inside, nestled among layers of protective cloth, lay the treasures from Greece. But my eyes were drawn immediately to one item. A mask, unlike anything I had ever seen. It was a work of art, intricately designed with an unsettling elegance, its features sharp and almost lifelike. I reached out, fingers trembling, to lift it from its resting place. As I held it up to the light, the rumors I'd heard began to surface in my mind. They said this mask was worn by a high priest during dark rituals, that it was cursed. My colleagues had warned me to be careful, to maybe even keep it locked away. But as I gazed into its hollow eyes, I felt an inexplicable pull. There was something beautiful about it, something captivating that I couldn't resist. I knew then that this mask had to be the centerpiece of our next exhibit. The world needed to see this, to feel what I was feeling, a mix of awe and unease. It would draw them in, just as it had drawn me. It started with small things, objects in my apartment not quite where I'd left them, a book open to a page I hadn't been reading, a light flickering in a room I hadn't entered. I told myself it was just stress, the excitement of the new exhibit playing tricks on my mind. But then there were the whispers, soft at first, barely audible, like distant voices carried on the wind. They would come late at night, just as I was drifting off to sleep, echoing through the empty rooms. I would sit up, heart pounding, and find nothing but silence. The real terror began when I started seeing him. The figure, always in the periphery, just a shadow at first, but then clearer, more defined. It was the mask, or rather someone wearing it, staring at me through mirrors, through windows, always with those hollow, lifeless eyes. I would spin around, expecting to find someone there, but there was never anything, just the lingering dread that something was terribly wrong. Despite the fear, I couldn't stay away from the museum. I found myself drawn to the mask, spending hours in the dimly lit exhibit, just watching it. I knew it was insane, but I felt a connection to it, like it was waiting for me, calling to me. The line between fascination and obsession blurred, and I could feel my grip on reality starting to slip. The whispers no longer came just at night. They were with me always, a constant murmur that burrowed into my mind, twisting my thoughts, urging me to do the unthinkable. "Wear it," they said, over and over, the command growing stronger, more insistent. I tried to ignore them, tried to focus on my work, but it was no use. The mask was all I could think about. Its image haunted me, filling every corner of my mind until there was nothing else. I could feel its pull, like invisible threads tugging at my very soul. I stopped sleeping, too afraid of the nightmares that awaited me if I closed my eyes. My reflection in the mirror became a stranger, gaunt and hollow-eyed, a far cry from the vibrant woman I used to be. My colleagues noticed, of course. They asked if I was okay, if I needed to take some time off, but their concern only fueled my paranoia. I couldn't trust them. Couldn't trust anyone. They didn't understand. The mask was mine, and no one would take it from me. I began spending all my time at the museum, long after the others had gone home. The mask called to me from its glass case, a siren song I could no longer resist. I would stand there for hours, just staring at it, imagining what it would feel like to finally give in, to slip it over my face. The whispers told me it would be a relief, that all the fear and anxiety would melt away once I embraced my fate. But I knew it was a lie. The mask wasn't offering me peace. It was demanding control. Yet the longer I fought it, the weaker I became. My thoughts were no longer my own. They were a tangle of fear, obsession, and the mask's relentless will. I was losing the battle, and deep down, I knew it. The urge to wear it grew stronger every day, until it was all I could think about. The mask wanted me, and I could feel myself slipping, falling deeper into its grasp. I couldn't fight it any longer. My hands trembled as I reached for the mask, the cold metal sending a shiver through me as I lifted it from its case. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening now, urging me on. I brought the mask to my face, and the moment it touched my skin, I was lost. A torrent of visions flooded my mind. Scenes of ancient rituals, blood and fire, sacrifices made in the dead of night. I could feel the mask fusing to me, becoming part of me, as if it had been waiting for this moment for centuries. I tried to scream, to tear it off, but I was no longer in control. The spirit of the high priest took over, my body moving on its own, compelled by a will that wasn't mine. I was trapped inside my own mind, a helpless observer as my hands performed unspeakable acts. The whispers were no longer just suggestions. They were commands, and I was powerless to resist. My reflection in the glass was no longer my own. I was nothing more than a vessel, my identity swallowed by the darkness of the past. I stood there, staring blankly at the face in the mirror, the mask now my prison, as the ancient spirit pushed me to continue its dark rituals, forever bound to its cursed will.
The sun was high, casting long shadows over the ancient stones of Machu Picchu as we wandered deeper into the ruins. Our laughter echoed through the deserted pathways, the thrill of discovery pulsing in our veins. It was pure luck, or maybe fate, that led us to the hidden entrance, half concealed by overgrown vines and loose stones. My heart raced as we squeezed through the narrow opening, descending into darkness. The air grew cooler as we ventured further, the walls of the chamber lined with faded carvings that seemed to tell a story long forgotten by history. An eerie stillness hung in the air, broken only by our whispered awe. My flashlight beam caught something small and glimmering in the corner, an intricately carved statue, half buried in dust. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, its lifelike detail unsettling, almost as if it were watching us. I felt a strange unease settle over me, but I shrugged it off. It was just a statue, after all, no different from the countless other relics we'd seen. I picked it up, the cold stone heavy in my hand, and decided it would make a perfect souvenir. My friends said nothing, but I could sense their discomfort. Still, we were adventurers, and I wasn't about to let a little superstition ruin the thrill of the find. The moment we returned to the lodge, I knew something was wrong. The air, once crisp and invigorating, now felt heavy, almost suffocating. It was as if the very atmosphere had thickened, weighed down by an unseen presence. My friends tried to shake off the unease, but it wasn't long before they started to feel the effects. One by one, they fell ill, complaining of headaches, chills, and a deep, bone-weary fatigue that no amount of rest could cure. The doctors couldn't explain it. There was nothing physically wrong, but I could see the fear in their eyes. As night fell, my own torment began. The dreams were the worst, vivid, terrifying visions where the statue's god towered over me, demanding worship, demanding sacrifice. I would wake in a cold sweat, the echoes of ancient chants ringing in my ears. But even in the waking hours, the line between reality and nightmare began to blur. I saw the god everywhere, in shadows, in reflections, in the very stones of Machu Picchu. The beauty of this place, once so awe-inspiring, had twisted into something dark and malevolent, as if the land itself was angry at what I had disturbed. I could feel the statue's influence growing, seeping into my mind, filling me with dread. The once picturesque surroundings now seemed like a prison, the mountains closing in on me, trapping me with the ancient curse I had unleashed. The sickness ravaged my friends, sapping their strength day by day. I watched helplessly as they grew weaker, their faces gaunt, their eyes dull with pain and confusion. No medicine seemed to help, and the doctors were at a loss. But I knew this was my fault, a consequence of disturbing something that should have been left alone. The guilt weighed on me, but it was nothing compared to the terror that gripped my mind. The visions were relentless, no longer confined to the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the god, towering and terrible, demanding my submission. But now, even when I was awake, I could hear his voice, a low, insistent whisper that never left me. "Serve me," it said. "Worship me." It wasn't a choice. It was a command, one that grew harder to resist with each passing hour. The statue, once just a piece of stone, now felt alive. I could sense it even when I wasn't looking at it, a dark presence that loomed over everything I did. My thoughts weren't my own anymore. They were twisted, consumed by the god's will. I started to withdraw from my friends, unable to bear their frightened stares or their questions. They didn't understand, they couldn't. How could they when I barely understood it myself? Paranoia took hold of me. I started to believe they were plotting against me, that they wanted to take the statue away. I couldn't let that happen. The statue was mine. It needed me as much as I needed it. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating, all my energy focused on guarding the relic. The once clear path back to normalcy disappeared, swallowed by the darkness that had taken root in my mind. I was losing myself, but I was powerless to stop it. The god had claimed me, and with each passing day, I sank deeper into madness. The man I once was fading into a shadow. Desperation clawed at me as I realized there was only one way to end this nightmare. I had to return the statue, put it back where it belonged. My friends, though weak and terrified, agreed it was our only hope. But as we tried to leave the lodge, something went terribly wrong. No matter which path we took, we always ended up back at the hidden chamber, the entrance to the nightmare I had unleashed. With each step, the god's presence grew stronger, more oppressive. The statue seemed to pulse with energy, drawing us closer with every attempt to escape. The realization hit me like a blow. I was never going to leave. This was my punishment, my fate. The god had claimed me, and there was no escape. As we reached the chamber one final time, the entrance began to seal shut, trapping us inside. I understood then that I was doomed to remain here, eternally bound to the relic as its guardian. My friends would be forgotten, lost to the curse I had brought upon them. But I would remember. I would remember every moment, every scream, every whisper of the god in my mind. As the darkness closed in, I accepted my fate, a silent guardian of an ancient curse, destined to serve the forgotten god for all eternity.